According to the article Archive of American Television, a television, commonly referred to as TV, is a telecommunication medium used for transmitting sound with moving images in monochrome or in color and in two or three dimensions. Television is a mass medium for entertainment, education, news, and advertising. Television became available in crude experimental forms in the late 1920s. After World War II, an improved form became popular in the United States and Britain, and television sets became common in homes, businesses, and institutions. As stated by Ralph Hansen in Mass Communication, television has gone through massive changes since its birth in the 1930s. Initially, it provided a limited number of options that were only the programs at no cost to viewers. Viewers could only watch the programs offered by the major networks and only at times when those programs were being broadcast. But in the 1980s, the balance of power between audience and broadcasters began to change. Broadcast television in the United States is based on the idea that programming should be available to all viewers and should be paid for through advertising. Although today broadcast television is just one part of our TV diet, for many years it was the only item on the menu. Today we are going to be talking about two famous inventors who were credited with making major contributions in the development of television. Our first inventor, Philo Farnsworth, he developed the central concepts of television at the age of 14. Along with that, he created the image dissector. Farnsworth, however, was not the only person working on the concept of television. Vladimir Isworkin, a Russian immigrant with a doctorate in engineering, developed the kinetoscope and the iconoscope. Finally, we will talk about the controversial topic of who the true father of television is.
Philo Farnsworth was born August 19, 1906 in Beaver, Utah. Known as a technical prodigy from an early age, Farnsworth was an avid reader of science magazines. As stated by Ralph Hansen, author of Mass Communications, it was said that 14-year-old Philo Farnsworth had a vision while working in a potato field in Idaho of sending pictures and waves over the air, like sound waves for radio. This epiphany inspired him to invent and later defy what engineers at the time thought was impossible, electronic television. According to an article Philo Farnsworth written by Eric Gregerson on Britannica.com, Farnsworth entered Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah in 1923 as a special student before working for charity fundraisers in 1926, later convincing them to give him $6,000 to produce his television system. Philo set up a lab in Los Angeles and started work on a camera tube that could turn an image into a stream of electrons and then into a picture. By September 7, 1927, Farnsworth made his first successful electronic television transmission and filed a patent for his system that same year. Meanwhile, another inventor, Vladimir Zworykin, was also working on creating an all-electronic television. He applied for a patent for his television camera, the iconoscope, in 1923. Vladimir Zworykin was born on July 30, 1889 in Russia, and became interested in electrical devices when he was only 9 years old, while helping his father with various electrical repairs on his boat. He later studied electrical engineering at the Imperial Institute of Technology, where he was introduced to experiments of transmitting pictures by wire. Zworykin briefly studied X-rays in Paris before moving to the United States in 1919 to work at the Westinghouse Laboratory in Pittsburgh. According to an article from the Early Television Museum on earlytelevision.org, by 1923, Vladimir filed for a patent for an all-electronic television system, which had cathode ray tubes for both transmitting and receiving images. He submitted a second application in 1925 with minor changes with the addition of color transmission and reception. He was awarded the 1925 application 3 years soon after, and the two patents for the 1923 application 8 years later. Vladimir Zworykin then went to work for the Radio Corporation of America, also known as RCA, in Camden, New Jersey, where RCA funded his research to perfect his cathode ray receiver, known as the kinescope, which was used for reproducing moving pictures electronically. However, his television system still used a mechanical device, a spinning mirror, as part of the transmission apparatus. In 1931, Zworykin completed the design for his video camera tube device that electronically captured images in a camera, the iconoscope. This would form the basis of electronic television. These two inventions, the iconoscope as a transmitter and a kinescope as a receiver, formed the first all-electronic television system. According to the Early Television Museum article on earlytelevision.org, all future television systems would be based on Zworykin's 1923 patent. By 1932, the RCA company was already mass-producing televisions with Zorkin's iconoscope, and people living within a 100-kilometer radius of New York became history's first television audience.
There have been many people who have helped develop television. When the term father of television is heard, however, there isn't a consensus answer that comes to mind. It seems that there is instead one of the largest debates in the circle of inventor history, with of course these two men being Philo Farnsworth and Vladimir Zworykin. The two men have both been credited with making significant contributions to television. Farnsworth with his image dissector that he's credited with drawing at age 14 in 1920 by an article titled Philo Farnsworth by BinghamYoungHighSchool.com, and Vladimir's kinescope, which he invented in 1929, along with his iconoscope, which the Encyclopedia Britannica credits him with filing for a patent in 1931. Vladimir Zworykin was the first to apply for a patent for the television system in 1923. However, Farnsworth was the first of the two to successfully demonstrate the transmission of television signal, which he did on September 7, 1927, using a scanning tube of his own design, according to technology teacher Stephen Ports in an article on Cyclink.com. When Farnsworth revealed his all-electronic television system in 1927, as stated on Biography.com in Farnsworth's article, it was the first of its kind. However, Inventors.com, Mary Bellis, in an article titled Vladimir Zworykin, claims Zworykin was the first to demonstrate a television system with all the features of modern picture tubes. These men both held many patents and important pieces of the puzzle that would soon fill every home in America and beyond. But, of course, their legacies are remembered differently by different people. Farnsworth's family in high school credit him with the complete production of television, while RCA and most of the Russian community credit Vladimir. Robert Thomas states in Zworykin's obituary, published in the New York Times, that his iconoscope is a major component that is still around today, modified, of course, in every television set around. In the end, RCA fought against Farnsworth in a series of many court battles until he won, and RCA was left with no choice but to pay him royalties of $1 million to sell their televisions. A big part of the evidence that supported Farnsworth's case was his high school teacher's testimony of having an image drawn by Farnsworth from when he was a 14-year-old student. The image was a sketch of what would later become his image dissector. Many people argue whether one of the two men were the true father of television. However, we can clearly agree that both of them made many contributions. Paul Shatskin asked this question in an article titled The Farnsworth Chronicles. How can we single out any individual and say it all started here? With all that being said, in conclusion, we've talked a little about television's history, then we learned more about our inventors, Philo and Vladimir, then discussed the idea of the father of TV. Now, both Farnsworth and Vladimir later in life share their feelings regarding the TV. Let's take a look. In an article titled Philo Farnsworth by Bingham Young High School, there's a quote from Farnsworth's son, Kent. Kent was once asked about his father's attitude, and Kent reported, and I quote, "I suppose you could say that he felt that he kind of created a monster, a way for people to waste a lot of their lives. Throughout my childhood, his reaction to television was, 'There's nothing on it worthwhile, and we're not going to watch it in this household, and I don't want it in your intellectual diet.'" And Vladimir was no big fan either. Quoted by Mary Bellis of Inventors.com, he said, "I hate what they've done to my child. I would never let my own children watch it." Now, though these men didn't exactly enjoy what television became, they did contribute to what would eventually become a popular learning tool. This is something that they would have loved to see. As far as the father of television goes, there's no clear answer, meaning that there may not even be one, or maybe there are two. Regardless, it is a great conversation, and it can be heavily debated, so we're just going to leave it up to you.